Welcome back to Icons of the Dragon Ball community, but in this instance, it's Icons of the Dragon Ball universe, specifically Universe 7. Joining me today, a very special guest and someone who's been in a lot of different movies and TV shows that the world loves. He's been a performer for over 2 decades. You may remember him from shows like Nashville, Breaking Bad, and of course, Tobin in The Walking Dead. Anime-wise, he's been in Macross, Fairy Tail, My Hero Academia, One Piece. But in our community, he's most known for portraying the God of Destruction, Beerus, in Dragon Ball. Please welcome Jason Douglas. How are you, sir?
I'm well, man. Thank you so much. It's really great to talk to you this morning.
No, it's great to talk to you as well. And we're actually recording this a couple of days before. I don't know if I want to spoil it, but let's just say something very interesting happened to your Walking Dead character. It's kind of funny that I'm talking to you now, you know.
Yeah. Actually, it just aired this weekend, so the world knows by now. So it's the fate of Tobin.
Right?
So
Without
yeah.
spoiling it, because you never know, because some people wait until like May to marathon all the episodes. So I'm just being...
Sure. Well, it's a big one. It's a big episode. It's probably my favorite episode that I've done, and dare I even say maybe one of the best of the season so far. So if you haven't seen it, get to your DVR, man.
Yeah, get on it. So the first obvious question, right, is what's it like playing a god who can't handle wasabi?
I think when they see Beerus coming, I think they give him a little extra dollop, under there, so he doesn't see it coming. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I think the thing with Beerus is he probably, he's a super taster, man. He probably that's why he reacts the way he does to food, regardless of whether it's, he feels it in his taste buds more deeply than you or I could ever imagine feeling it. So, if it's salty, he feels it super salty. If it's sweet, he feels it super sweet. He's like in touch with the umami of, the flavors, man. He's into it. So,
right.
yeah,
No,
that's his super,
awesome.
that's his super powered reaction to wasabi.
Well, I mean, most of us, we would react the same way.
I think so, yeah. I go for the extra wasabi, man. I dig it.
Yeah, no, I do too, but you got to be careful because it might hit some spot in your mouth and,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go flying. So
See, yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
no,
go
I was
ahead.
going to ask you, you've done TV,
Sure.
live and anime and movies and whatnot. You're kind of a jack of all trades. When you were a kid, did you always want to be a performer? Like what did you want to be originally?
I love that question because it's so, when I was a kid, I think I didn't know what I wanted to be, but one year for Christmas, like my grandmother gave me like a tape recorder and like not even a Super Night. It was one of those like things you get at Radio Shack, with you like kind of set the cassette down in there, and it was just strictly for probably dictation or something. And that was my favorite toy for like years. And I would record myself. I would get my friends. We would do like these, like, these shows, like these radio dramas or something. You know what I mean? We didn't know what we were doing, but we would just record ourselves playing, doing voices. And that was where I got started as a performer, without even really knowing what I was doing. I was just having fun, and we would make tapes, and I'd throw them in, on the shelf when I was done, and then I'd go get a new one a new cassette at Kmart, and they sold them in little bags of 3 for these things. I didn't really start actually acting until I was in high school when I started doing stage work, and that was how I got started, and it wasn't until much later that I kind of stumbled into doing voices, for anime, because I originally just thought of myself as a stage actor, primarily. So.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I read online that you're into Kill a Mockingbird, the theatrical production, Atticus Finch. Is that true?
Well, I did that a year ago. That was this production that I did in Houston, and I honestly I don't get to do as much stage anymore. But the 80 Players, a theater out of Houston, Texas, reached out to me They were having their 50th anniversary season and opening up a brand new multi-million-dollar facility, and they wanted their inaugural show for their 50th anniversary season and also in their new facility to be To Kill a Mockingbird, which they felt was, and I think is, a very timely show. And so I had time. We were on hiatus from The Walking Dead, and I said, let's do it. I haven't been on stage in a few years, but to get to play this amazing, iconic role would be just a great experience for me. So I did about a year ago, and we ran for about a month, and we had great audiences, and it was just it was so rejuvenating for me as an actor to get to do that play.
Yeah, right. No, and actually, I was gonna ask you, because so you do enjoy stage work, because I know that when you're on the stage,
Yeah.
it's different than voice acting because I can't imagine it being, a little bit more. I guess you have to be on your toes because you can't really mess up. You know?
Right, right, right. Well, of course, on stage, you get minimally 3 to 4 weeks of rehearsal, and so you're going through those paces over and over and over again, and you're refining and you're refining. But yeah, at one point, Atticus in that play, for instance, has like a 3 or 4 page monologue. It's his closing argument. It's the centerpiece of the entire show, and I was pretty intimidated at first, just having not been on stage as much in recent years, so a bit out of practice for memorizing and also just performing at that length. But we did it, and I think there were once you get words in you, it's hard to get them out. Like you just start to feel the rhythm of the scene, and you know where it's going. I think there were a few nights when I mixed some things up, and then I said something early, in the speech that should have come later, and I just rolled with it. I just made sure I said I said all the things. So yeah, so it was good.
So I know that you started like your career, or at least I presume based on what I read, voice acting. I was going to ask you, how'd you get into the business? Like, did you do commercials when you were younger? Because I know a lot of people I talked to, like Cynthia Kranz and Monica, was talking about doing commercials at an early age. Is that what happened?
I was not one of those kids. I did not have stage parents. I did not have like a child acting career of any sort whatsoever. I actually had stage fright as a kid. I avoided doing the school play, kind of stuff when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. I stumbled into it in high school, and I was doing, the first thing I did was a play called Wait Until Dark when I was a freshman in high school, and then later on I did something as a senior in high school, Midsummer Night's Dream. And after that, I went to college, and I decided to major in drama because I had been bitten by the bug for acting, and I didn't know how else to pursue it. So I just went to University of Houston, and that's really how I got into it. Later on, while I was doing theater in Houston, I got a couple of friends of mine who were already working for the company that was known then as ADV Films.
Right.
They were saying, "Hey, man, you should, check this out. It's a way to make a little, actually make a little money acting, and you don't have to wait tables and move furniture and, quite as much." And so I went and auditioned for a show that Matt Greenfield was directing, and it turns out he had actually seen me in a play, a kind of a comedy in Houston, and remembered my work, and so he was kind of eager to work with me, and so that was it. From there on, I did a show called Kimaguri Orange Road, Summer's Beginning, which was an OVA that most people have long since forgotten about. But the thing we did right after that was we did the UK dub of Street Fighter 2V, and I played Ken.
Oh, I love that show.
And then right on top of that, we did Bubblegum Crisis 2040, the sort of the Bubblegum Crisis reboot from the late 90s that was so good. And so that was kind of my trilogy of the first things I ever did in anime. And ADV continued to use me throughout the late 90s, early aughts, until they kind of started, their production started dropping before they reorganized as Sentai. And by that time, I had moved up to the Dallas area and was starting to work quite a bit with Funimation. So
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go back to the Funimation thing because I'm gonna ask you about Dragon Ball
Mhm.
shortly. I wanted to ask you though before the whole Dragon Ball thing, which role back then in the early career, like which one do you think improved your skills and kind of honed you, and like which one is the one where you actually in your head, I guess, were like, okay, like this
yeah,
is like I'm in, or were you always just so confident it was like I can do this no matter what?
yeah, I don't know. There's so many roles. That's the thing. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Somebody in the business. I think it was Monica actually, because we did a convention recently together, and I was just saying like there was so much work that I felt like was really good work that we did back then that a lot of people have forgotten about. And part of the reason it's actually good is that there's so much anime content now that comes out every year, and it kind of buries what came before it. There's always something new. But there were shows like Sorcerer Hunters that I played Marin Glacé, who was this kind of interesting character, and I'm trying to think. Let's see, that was Rune Explorers. There was I'm just blanking. There was a show that I really loved called Wandaba Style. That I did with John Swayze directing, and I played the sleazy manager of an all-girls Japanese pop band. I mean, the show was ridiculous, but kind of hilarious. And of course, there was Excel Saga, where I played Il Palazzo, and then there was like some other ones that were more dramatic. Hugo the Negotiator is one that somebody brought up recently. Like they were like, I just saw that was really good. I never heard about it back then, but it was about a man who is a hostage negotiator, and he flies all over the world. He takes cases on a private basis to get people's people that are captured by foreign regimes or terrorist groups, and he negotiates to get them free. And that's the premise of the show. And it's very dramatic and it's sort of action oriented, but it's not robots, it's not mecha, it's very political and international thriller. So I cut my teeth on a lot of that stuff. There were some directors that came through at that time that were very, I don't know, they were outside the box thinkers, just to be cliche about it. But
Right.
they cast me in roles that I wasn't maybe getting looked at for. There's a tendency, I think, to kind of use me because I am kind of a big guy. If you haven't met me, I'm like 6'4", 6'5", and there's a tendency to sometimes maybe cast me in kind of the big guy roles. The guys
Yeah.
that are tough guys. They talk like this, and that's
The
kind
monsters.
of the monsters and like the big guys, the big sword wielding guys, and that's fine. I don't mind those things, but I have a broader range than that, and a lot of these guys were starting to use me in those ways. So I think that's what helped me the most is when I was able to kind of break out of the big guy roles and kind of start to do roles that were where the characters didn't look anything like me, like a geeky computer programmer type of character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I crave those kinds of roles because they're outside of what I ordinarily do. I'm currently playing the dad in Card Captor Sakura, the new I guess the new,
The
yeah,
the 2014 one, yeah, I think it's
no,
2014, right?
yeah, it's the new one that we're doing now with Funimation, and I'm not sure how recent it is, but I believe it's a simuldub currently.
Oh, then it's
Yeah,
still going
it's
on.
pretty new, and again, he's nothing like the characters I ordinarily play. He's very soft spoken. He's sort of a archaeologist, so he's a professor, and he's like a loving father, and I don't know, I dig that.
You do both. I've noticed like you do a lot of big roles and a lot of small roles, both live action and anime
Sure.
voice acting. Do you prepare differently when it comes to like what you're doing? Because I feel like if you have a bigger role, maybe you would study the character more, or is
Sure.
it just not really? I mean, I'm just curious about how that works.
Yeah. Preparation is important, but I do think you sometimes prepare differently. If I have a very big character coming up, for instance, I play a role in a film coming up. This is live action. It's a film called Trial by Fire, and it's based on a very real, infamous Texas death penalty case. And I'm playing a character that is a real person, and he's a person in real life.
Wow.
So I really wanted to make sure that I did justice to that, and so I did spend a lot of time just researching this whole case. I spent a lot of time researching this guy in particular. I tried to find any video I could of him being interviewed, and it's not that I was specifically trying to imitate him, but I needed to get his rhythm. I wanted to get the vibe of what he was all about, and then I just wanted to saturate myself with the details of the case, which, I mean, you can look it up. It's the Cameron Todd Willingham case from the late 90s. And so I watched the documentaries that were produced about this case. I basically wanted to get to set, and when they called action, I wanted to be living in the world of that case and feel like I really am this guy. And so that's a pretty high level of preparation for a certain kind of performance. I mean, there are times when I get called into Funimation and, hey, we just need you to be like this one guy's very, a lot of times it's a stock character that's maybe a supporting character. And it's not hard to sort of have that already, because I've been doing it so long. I can find some of those smaller characters. If it's a big character, I just did a new show for my friend Kyle Jones down in Houston at Sentai. And it was a lead role in a show called Grimoire of Zero, and I knew that it was a well-loved and very well done show, and so I wanted to watch it in advance, and so they gave me a way to basically watch the entire series before I came in to record it, and with that it's just being familiar. Sometimes it's not helpful to be in the session and to be encountering a scene for the very first time. We can do it. We do it all the time. It's what we do. But sometimes I want to know in advance, what's coming, because it does help you to kind of formulate the arc of the character that you're playing. And even though in anime you actually are given really great clues about how to do the performance, because you've got not only the visual that's in front of you, but you can also kind of key a little bit off of what the your Japanese counterpart also did. Not that you're trying to imitate it, but it just kind of gives you a sense of, okay, this is how they did it. So that's going to inform to some degree
the inflections.
Yeah. And how they hit it, the intensity, and I may decide to go in a different direction, but at least I find it helpful to know what they did, because there are times when I felt like that maybe was a little over the top for this moment, and so I'll make a decision. I don't think that we are beholden to I don't think we're beholden to the Japanese performance to kind of do it just like they did. I think it can be a guide sometimes if we're maybe not sure about something.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the character is right, I guess you can say, right?
Right, of course. I mean, I wasn't, I do Beerus. I'm not trying to in any way emulate what what my Japanese counterpart is doing with the character, who I think is great, by the way. And I think what's cool is we both have kind of a different approach to the character.
Your voices are similar, though.
Yeah,
I've noticed that.
In some degrees. Yep, I think it's true. I think in some cases there is some overlap, but I think he's got. I think just in my experience, he tends to stay in more of a deeper resonance more often than I do, and I want Beerus to bounce around. I want him to have a really mercurial personality, and I want his voice to reflect that. So that there are times when he's very serious and gruff, and he kind of gets into his lower register. But other times when he's maybe more relaxed, he's kind of back at home, and he's kind of yapping with Weiss about what's for dinner, or if he's at one of Bulma's dinner parties, and is just enjoying the cuisine. I think then he's kind of more relaxed, So I don't want him to be sort of the gruff and angry Beerus all the time.
Right. Now, I want to ask you about movies real quick here, and then we're going to get to Dragon Ball a little bit more, like how you got in there. But I think it's pretty crazy that you're in two of the most popular franchises of all time within a short span. I like comparing Dragon Ball and Walking Dead because they both have original comics that got adapted, serialized, and it's funny because Walking Dead has scored some of the highest ratings in AMC history. I mean, that's like a pop culture phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And Dragon Ball is too. But I wanted to ask you about like some of the film stuff you've done because I looked it up and again, if this is incorrect, I apologize. But you were in Sin City.
I was in Sin City. Yeah.
What was it like working with Robert Rodriguez? Because I mean, I had seen that movie a while back. I didn't recognize. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Did you actually work with him?
Sure did. Yeah, I worked with him and Frank Miller and
that's crazy.
Yeah. No, it was insane. That was an early one of the first film roles I did. It wasn't the first film role, but it was early in my career, and I had the big scene as I played a hitman. I had the big scene with Mickey Rourke, where he's drinking at Katie's bar, and then these hitmen come up behind him, and they're going to take him out, and they all go out in the alley, and then of course we know what happens next. And what was great about that is it wasn't over after he kind of disarms us. He doesn't just kill us and move on. There's this extended scene that's still in the it's in the movie where it's just he and I sitting mano a mano in the alleyway, and he's interrogating me. That was a great experience. I really was. I don't want to say intimidated, but I knew coming into it that it was a game changer for me to be able to have a scene like that with an actor like Mickey Rourke. And I was a big fan of Robert anyway. I had been following his career, before that. I'd read Rebel Without a Crew, and so he was doing great work, and he was such a great filmmaker that was loyal to Texas, so that it was affecting a lot of us, to be able to stay in Texas and work. So it was awesome to be able to go to Austin, 2 hours away from where I lived, and to shoot a film like that, and for it to become so, it was huge. I don't think anybody realized how big that movie was going to be, and it was such a perfect way of turning Frank Miller's work and putting it on the screen, and I think a lot of things were affected by that afterwards. You can certainly look at the style of other movies like 300 and other comic book movies. I mean, I think all comic book movies, certainly nowadays, kind of owe something to what Robert did with Sin City, because it was a real game changer.
Yeah, the Zack Snyder style, that kind of dark,
Yeah, you
artistic.
You can't get away from it at this point. And I mean, Robert kind of set the rules. I mean, kind of established the rules of the game. Like, this is how you make an adaptation. There's a loose way of adapting where you just kind of take the general storyline and the characters, and then you go make some entirely different looking thing. But what Robert wanted to do was he wanted to make it feel like the actual panels had come to life. So we didn't have a storyboard. We had the book. I mean, that was what we were using as the storyboard, was the actual book. And so every scene was framed to look like what it looks like on the page. And of course, certain sets were practical. I mean, Katie's bar was an entirely practical set, which means that it was a real set. But obviously, as you know, much of it was in front of green screen, and
that's how it is nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're making that kind of an adaptation of a comic book. So, but the fact that he did it in black and white, I mean, he maintained, a style that was true to the book. He was in every sense trying to bring Frank Miller's work up off of the page, and not just do like, an adaptation, which was kind of, oh, by the way, Frank Miller. I mean, no, like you're seeing Frank Miller's work. And that's why it was so important to Robert to make him, to have him credited as a co-director of the film, which was unheard of at that time. In fact, the Directors Guild did not approve of that, and I think Robert actually quit the guild so that he could give Frank Miller his due credit for his work on the film. Yeah, but
wow.
Yeah, so I mean, you asked about, just in general, question of kind of the way I do it. Uh, I've continued to do anime work over the years, in spite of having gone back and forth. I still do television. I do film whenever I can, and that's really just the way of uh, kind of
Stay
yeah,
busy.
staying busy. I mean, and I still live in Texas. I always say like I'm a blue collar actor, right? And it's not like it's not like it's not like big time directors are sending me scripts and saying pick the next one you want to do. I mean, there's no, I still have to kind of make a living and pay the bills, and so that's why I mean I mean I'll do the smaller roles. I don't mind that. We put it together, and if we can afford to pay our mortgages and raise our kids and and have a life, then we're doing okay.
No, and it's funny because Robert Rodriguez, one of his frequent collaborators, is Danny Trejo, and that dude did about 8 movies a year at one time. You know what I mean?
Right. That guy is like that guy. I don't know when I think he's immortal. Actually, I think we're going to find out that he's actually been alive for 10,000 years, and that's that he kind of looks like that because that's what centuries do to you. But no, that's a golden individual, and I just hope that by the time I'm Danny's age, whatever his age is, because I don't think any of us really know, that I can have as much energy and be as like actually healthy as that guy is. It's insane.
You were on Jack Reacher.
Yep.
What was it like meeting Tom Cruise?
Tom was very cool, very accessible. I mean, I know he gets his share of negative press for all the reasons that
He's a little eclectic.
well, there's part of it is just because he's like a super A-lister. He's not just an A-lister. He's like a super A-lister. So he's in that 1% of 1% realm. Whereas actually, believe it or not, there's a lot of actors who are famous, but if you worked with them, you realize how very down to earth they are, and actually how kind of scrappy their lifestyle is. Like somebody you admire from television, but at the end of the day, they're still like driving themselves around and kind of auditioning for things. There are more of those actors than but when you get to guys like Tom Cruise and Dwayne Johnson
Top dog.
and like top dog mega superstars, there really is like like when you can have an entourage, right? When you don't have a trailer on set, you actually have like a giant tour bus, and it's yours, right? Like you own it. Like that's a completely different way to be a star. That's like royalty. And so I'm saying all this to just set up the fact that when I got to set, he was really one of the nicest and most accessible guys that I've had a chance to work with. He was chatty. He didn't treat me like a plebe. He was very accessible, and Ed Zwick was a big part of that. He was the director of Jack Reacher, and he'd worked with Tom before quite a bit, and they had a good working relationship. And so yeah, they made it that made it very very easy and cool. But yeah, I would say on set, Tom is very he produces all his own movies as well. He's always listed as a producer on his films, so he's not just an actor hanging out saying lines. He's also kind of making sure that things are running right. So he does call some shots when he's on set, but yeah, he was great to work with. And interestingly, that collaboration with Ed Zwick is what kind of led to me doing the film Trial by Fire, which I just mentioned earlier about the death penalty case, because that's also an Ed Zwick film. He directed that as well. So
you got a career. Your career, you still got a lot left, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this year is turning out to be a busy one for me, both on camera and on mic. And there are some projects coming up, some of which I can talk about, and some of which I can't yet talk about. But I'm very excited. Very excited.
I was gonna ask you real quick to compare, because from what I understand, when you're doing a movie, you're on set and you're just kind of, from what I understand, a lot of times you're just waiting. And doing things over again, whereas when you're in the studio recording Okratron or wherever, Sentai, it's the three beeps, beep, 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 talk,
Right.
beep, beep, beep,
Yeah.
talk, in and out. You're
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Is that's accurate then, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, it is a different process. I mean, obviously, recording anime is a very technical process, and so you really have to be on your game to kind of bring a performance within the constraints of that sort of technical process, which is standing in the booth, you're on mic, um, but once the beeps happen, then it's your time to perform, and so you're bringing a performance uh, uh, on cue, but it will take some time to get it right, of course, and nuance the performance. Sometimes, if it's a bigger character, we'll spend more time on it. Certainly for Beerus, I work with Raleigh Pickens mostly on that, and I will insist on going back. There are times when I'm like, hey, I know that take was fine and we can live with it, but I feel like there's something missing on that. Let's give it a little more polish. And we give ourselves that luxury with Dragon Ball. We don't have that luxury with every title because some things they just don't budget as much time for. I don't know who makes that call, but with film there's also a technical aspect because really there's so much going on around you. No matter how small or intimate the scene feels when you're watching it, there are probably 50 to 100 crew, in the vicinity of that scene doing something at that exact moment in order to make that scene happen. So,
Yeah.
that's the big transition that a lot of people who have worked on stage have to make, because when you come from the stage, you're acting. It's all about that performance in that moment, and the lights are on you. And yes, there was set design, and yes, there was wardrobe and costume design, but ultimately, it's all about the performer in that moment, in that live moment. Whereas when you're working on screen, it really is a collaboration of a lot of people doing things at the same time, and it's not just about you. It's about what's the camera guy doing. It's about what's the boom operator doing. There's a guy that his job is strictly to focus the camera at the right moment on you when you say a certain thing or when you pick up a certain object, and our job is the job of the filmmaker is to make all of that look seamless so that when you're watching it, it all comes together and it doesn't feel like something technical. It doesn't feel like a clunky sort of student film, but it feels like an actual world where people are living and breathing. So it's invigorating to work in that kind of environment, but it can be intimidating for someone who hasn't done it.
They're gonna kill me if I don't talk about Dragon Ball. I would love to ask you so many more questions about the films because I'm a big film guy too. But
Yeah.
maybe another time. 'Cause there's so many things that are interesting to me. So you first joined Dragon Ball with Kai, voicing Killa, King Cold, South Kai. How did
Yeah.
that whole audition process start? Did Sabat or Raleigh personally call you, or was it through an agent, or how did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been knocking around Funimation at that point for a bit, and had done shows like Trinity Blood. I'd done several things with Mike McFarland and Colleen Clinkenbeard, and I think I know that I had come over to Okratron for a number of things, um, most notably Borderlands 2 when
That's right.
I played Krieg, the psycho in the DLC character, which is blown up. Like it's a lot of people's favorite character now. That was a session with Gearbox, of course, and but it really came right, I think, before we really started getting busy doing the new Dragon Ball stuff. And so I think by that point, Chris was aware of me and of my work. And I think the first thing that we really did with kind of Beerus was
Battle of
um,
Z.
Battle of Z, yeah, the video game
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that was an early establishment of that character, and I have to go back and see what that actual work was because I feel like it was probably a bit different than what we settled on in Battle of the Gods, because Battle of Gods really was where we established kind of the Beerus that we know and love, But yeah, I wasn't foreign to the Dragon Ball universe at that point, but I was certainly not somebody that was, known for being any character in particular. I mean, if you think about it, those were the roles that I had done prior to that were mainly just smaller roles that had been done by other actors, previously, and so I was just kind of filling in. But I felt really honored to do Beerus, to be asked to do Beerus, because he seemed like such a well-crafted and interesting character. I think we didn't know early on that he was going to play such a prominent role in kind of the extended vision of what the new Dragon Ball was going to be. So maybe he's going to be around for a little while, and then he's going to go away or get killed off. We don't know if he's going to suffer that fate or if he's going to be a permanent part of the wider sort of Dragon Ball family. And so far he's still hanging out. So
I was going to actually ask you about that very thing, because I feel like with Battle of Gods, the film, he was just kind of a multi-layered antagonist, like Goku's opposite with the food and the fighting. But as Super progressed, Beerus sort of is now a main character. He's in every arc. He's always there.
Right.
Obviously, besides you wanting to play the character, we'll move that aside for just a moment. Do you think that giving Goku such a powerful friend undermines the drama and the stakes in the series, rather than just have him appear occasionally? Because during the fight with
Right.
Frieza and Resurrection F, there was no danger there. You've got a friend who's the god of destruction, and you've got the other guy, Whis, who can turn back time. So what's the thing to fear there? So just as like
Right.
a writer,
Right.
I guess, yeah. Do you
Right,
think
right,
that
right.
was a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting. I think we've had some version of this conversation before in like just amongst some of us, and I think you have to understand. I think you're coming in after having many hundreds of episodes of Dragon Ball in various forms over a 20-year period, plus all the games, and I think maybe there was the question of what more can we do, and I think if they had kept Beerus as kind of a Shenron-like form in a single universe that was all powerful, then I think that it would be. I don't know if it would be a mistake, but I think what we've seen now is that it's not just the one universe; it's this multiverse kind of idea, and so you've actually expanded. You've expanded what Dragon Ball is. You've expanded the universes, the possibility of foes that can come in, and you've given a place for Goku and Vegeta. Let's not forget about Vegeta. You've given a place for these guys to expand into. The whole question of either supplanting or usurping or inheriting a throne, so to speak, of maybe as a god of destruction by either Goku or Vegeta, is an interesting one. It's one that's been certainly hinted at in the show several times. And what does that actually mean? So I don't know. I think there are times that you can ask, like, are the stakes really high here because of? And I think it's just the rules of the universe. I've always said this from the beginning. Beerus is a force of nature. He should be thought of in that way, and as being unpredictable. He is sort of morally neutral in the sense that we
Right, yeah.
ordinarily think of a character. He's not the evil. He's not evil. He's not evil, but he's also not good, unless by good you mean a force that kind of balances things out, in the universe.
That's what his job is. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a certain sense, he's less concerned with the momentary afflictions of any particular character or what we would think of as a happiness or a peaceful ending. And he doesn't have a sense of like. I don't think he has a sense of like moral justice in that way. I think it's something a little bit beyond that. He's serving something bigger than what Goku or Vegeta understands at this point. But I do think Beerus is dangerous, and he's certainly dangerous to our protagonists. He's dangerous to any antagonist that comes his way. And so I think at a certain point it'll be interesting to see if the creators of the show tinker with that, either by making him less dangerous or vulnerable in some way, or making him lose it a little bit and really kind of put on his like dangerous god form, like I don't care, I'm going to destroy anything in my path, and to give them something to have to stop. It's Goku and Vegeta. Could they possibly team up and defeat Beerus if they had to in some ways? You know what I mean? Like I think that's important, because I think we're beginning to understand, having read deeper into the manga and kind of the trajectory, that Beerus really is perhaps the most, he is probably the most powerful god of destruction.
I think it's very likely. Yeah, the manga definitely portrayed it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know if they say it overtly, but you certainly see in the Tournament of Power.
The manga version, he's over there doing Hapkido. I mean, I don't know if he is the strongest, but he's definitely one of the top ones. He has to be.
Yeah. So I think the potential there, the potential there is off the charts in terms of what he could do, and I think that's obviously a problem in any kind of comic book world. The idea of the overpowered hero or villain, but the fact that you have these. You have this sort of the supreme, the supreme being of the universe, which can just flick any of them out of existence. And then just, I think other contenders. I think the fact that others can possibly contend for the role of destructor of another universe, even Shenron sometimes I think, what's that old dragon got up his sleeve, man? If he can like grant any wish and do anything, there's a certain power there.
Right. He's afraid of Beerus. We know that.
Yeah. Well, we know that, but I feel like, I think there's always the potential of what are the limitations of what those beings can do. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the Super Dragon Ball's a dragon. That's the one that's interesting, because without going into any real spoilers, he did something in episode 131 that kind of reversed what Zeno did, which was kind of interesting. And when it comes to Beerus, he still has not been challenged yet by a mortal, and it's interesting because by the end of Super, he hasn't been challenged by a mortal yet. We've never seen him at full strength yet. The debate is he more powerful than Jiren? Is Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku more powerful than him? But we have not seen Beerus at max power. He has not even gone back to sleep yet, which tells me he's probably going to be in the movie. So I don't even know what to think about what might happen with him. Is he gonna go back to sleep?
Right. Well, no. Look. Here's the thing. The inciting incident of all of what we now have in terms of Dragon Ball Super and the films from Battle of Gods. The inciting incident,
the dream, right?
Is a dream.
Yeah,
it's a dream that he keeps having. That there's this, and he wakes up revitalized. He's excited about the idea that there might be someone on the horizon that can challenge. It's interesting. It's not the typical like I must crush this potential rival. It's more like he's almost like rubbing his hands together, giddy
like
at the
Goku
thought that,
does.
Like the idea that someone actually might be able to. So I think he's bored. So I think the entire, this entire time, everything we've had for these 130 episodes of things happening is you have Beerus just waiting in the wings, taking a look at everyone, saying, "Who will it be? Who will it be? When is it?" And that's just the way I see it. And I don't know if that's ultimately how they're gonna, come at it. But yeah, I don't think Beerus is ready to go back to sleep.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I see it the same way. When you did the character for Battle of Z, did they already determine you were going to come back for the movie back then, or you weren't really sure? Because I know that when they do the video games, sometimes the original voice actors or the original voices are modified for the anime. Hit being a big example of that. So did they already tell you when you did Battle of Z, hey, there's a movie coming up? Because the movie was already out in Japan for about a year and a half before the dub came out. So did they already tell you, hey, you're this dude for the dub?
Yeah, I don't recall that actually, and I'm trying to think if like they were. I almost feel like they had the video game, and I think it was just, hey, let's take this one thing at a time. I'll also say that you know, there's always the question of who's going to get the license to do the next thing. I mean, as you know, from an outsider standpoint, you might think, well, Funimation's got that wrapped up, but I think there are sometimes questions about, whether or not we actually have the license to do the next, the next thing. Yeah, I think for me as an actor, I think we just kind of did Beerus, and then I think they may have said, there's this other thing. We think he comes back in this movie and in this, So, yeah, we were just taking it one bit at a time at that point.
So even though you're relatively new to the franchise compared to guys like Sabat and Schemmel who were there in the late '90s, a lot of Dragon Ball fans have said that you're their favorite voice actor. So you definitely made an impression on a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I'm so grateful for that. I mean, I've been doing this. I've been doing voice acting for as long as those guys, but I'm certainly new to the franchise. So I'm certainly new to a lot of the fans of Dragon Ball. And honestly, I just feel like in terms of Dragon Ball, I really I'm walking in those guys' footsteps. They kind of blaze that trail in terms of not just voicing those characters, but really in really popularizing the show here and promoting it. And so I'm incredibly grateful to Chris and Sean, and then of course the fans have been awesome, and I've gotten to meet a lot of the fans at conventions, and yeah, I mean they're the reason that I really take the time that I choose to take when we record this character, and I want to get it right. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that this Beerus, each time is up to par. So.
Well, you've done a lot. You've worked with a lot of great names. The sky really is the limit. Now, other than Trial by Fire, before we wrap up, what's next?
Yeah.
Like that you can talk about, obviously.
Yeah.
We're not
Sure.
going to break NDA here.
Yeah.
What's next for you? And also, what are your goals for the future? Like, are you looking to? Because I talk to some VAs, and some of them say, "I want to do Disney, even if it's once. I want to do Disney, or I want to do, a certain Final Fantasy or something." Do you have any goals anything on your bucket list you want to knock off?
I've always wanted to be a character on a Star Trek franchise of some kind.
You're a fan?
I'm a fan. I'm an old fan. I grew up with it. I'm not like a hardcore Trekkie, but I grew up watching the original series on in syndication with my dad. And as a little kid, when I would stay with my dad, I would go to sleep, and it would come on after the news, like the original series, in syndication. And he would watch the news every night, and then he would watch Star Trek after. So I would fall asleep to the sounds of kind of like the gadgetry and all the sound effects. And then later on, I started watching the show with him. So it's kind of ingrained in my memory. And I've tried to, I've kept up with all the different franchise iterations over the years. So I just think it'd be cool to play a villain or something on a show like that. I'm very envious of.
I was just going to ask you, have you met Shatner? Because the weekend of KamehamehaCon, which you'll be there, he's got a different convention. I was like, damn, have you met Shatner yet? Because I always wanted to meet that guy.
I haven't yet. I don't think I have. I feel like we might have done a con. We might have been at the same con at one point. All the other guys have. I mean, certainly Schemmel has, and Chris Sabat have, and because he does so many. I mean,
he's awesome.
He is out there, and of course I know Vic Mignogna, who has just has spent a lot of time with Shatner, and I mean, he's a really interesting dude, for sure.
So other than Star Trek, anything else that you want to tell us that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, I think there's an indie sci-fi movie called Dropa that's going to be hopefully coming out later this year. I mean, this is a very indie film, but it's a very high concept indie, which is unusual. And I'm in it as one of the lead characters. Anime fans will also be familiar with David Matranga, who does a ton of anime voice work, and he is also a lead in the film. It was actually shot in Houston, and it portrays kind of I always called it like a Blade Runner meets District 9. It's kind of got that vibe.
Love it.
And so that's due out later this year. Trial by Fire, and then and then there's a couple of things on the horizon that I'm excited about, and I'm just, it's one of those early stage things, and they don't want you to talk about it or give away the spoilers. So I hope people will stay tuned in. Follow me on Twitter. Keep you updated with all that stuff.
Yeah, go ahead and plug all your social media. I know you had an Instagram, Twitter. Do you still have your Instagram? You should.
Still have my Instagram. Yeah. I think it's just like Jason Douglas 2040. I do Twitter as well, which is Mr. Jason Douglas, and then I have a fan page on Facebook called Jason Douglas Fans. And then there's an unofficial fan club, strangely enough, called Team Jason Fans, and it's run by a gal named Christine, and she's kind of a mega fan. She mostly comes from the Walking Dead universe and does a lot of cosplay, but she's also follows and promotes a lot of the voice work that I do, and so she's out there, and so yeah, so I'm out there. Follow if you're listening, and I'll try to be interesting.
Well, thank you for joining me today. It means a lot to me. I really look forward to meeting you face to face in May for the convention.
Right on, man. Me too. This is going to be so exciting having everybody under one roof, and I will be there. So
great. And everybody bring your Beerus merchandise so you have Jason sign it for you. All the stuff, the DVDs, the Blu-rays, the toys, because they got the Dragon Ball Super toys out now with Beerus in them, so they're out there.
Oh yeah, they're out there, and I've signed a lot of those, and the bobbleheads and the pop figures. There's some cool Beerus toys, and somebody brought one that was like, I swear it was like 3 feet tall. It was something from Japan that he had to direct order. It was amazing. But I'm seeing a lot of fan art too. A lot of fans are bringing like stuff they've created, and I'm always moved by that. Like when people spend time to like create art based on your character.
They're talented, man, those people.
So cool. Yeah, it's like the greatest thing ever. I'm always just like struck by it. So
well, thank you again. And hey, everybody check out Jason on Twitter, on Instagram, and hopefully on the big and the small screen.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you later on.